Now, what about this $56 billion pay package? That does sound extreme, I guess. Well, it sounds extreme. Now, as Tesla noted at the outset, the accounting fair value of the award in 2018 would have been about $2.3 billion. Why did it get to $56 billion? Well, the size of the award grew in proportion to the value that Tesla created for shareholders. So from 2.3 billion to 56 billion. Now, for perspective, just to put that 2.3 billion into perspective, this is what the board of directors were considering in 2018. For perspective, GM and Ford, each of them, spent $4 billion on advertising in just 1 year, 2018. Elon Musk is Tesla's best salesman. He is the best advertisement for Tesla. Tesla has never paid for advertising until very recently. Certainly not in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22. That 5-year period, Tesla did not advertise. And Ford and GM each spent $4 billion. So Elon's pay package at $2.3 billion was less than the advertising budget that Tesla would have had to have spent, if GM and Ford are any indication, were Elon Musk not the advertising platform himself for Tesla. How can shareholders renege on his pay package? We do not understand. In fact, we would say reneging on that agreement is unconscionable.
Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Real quick, Victor, if you happen to see this, it was a pleasure meeting you and your wife. And as always, thank you for being a part of the Electrified community. FSD 12.4.1 is out to employees. We've already covered some of the updates, but don't forget they're saying improved comfort by reducing the acceleration and the hard braking, and that your car will now look for a parking spot upon arriving at the destination. I know sometimes on 12.3 this would happen, but it was definitely inconsistent at best. The new software branch with 12.4.1, which is 2024.15.5, is supposed to be the update that brings together the non-FSD and FSD branches into one. So of course, if you're stuck on 2024.3 or .8 or .14, you should be eligible for this upgrade. Additionally, when the cabin camera is being used for driver monitoring, there will now be a green dot on the UI just to let you know that's what's being used. That would be the replacement of sorts for the steering wheel nag to ensure you're paying attention. But if you have sunglasses on or a hat with a low brim and the camera can't see your eyes, then it'll default to using the steering wheel nag. Elon has said before that banish, or what used to be reverse summon, was going to be included with 12.4, but so far for .1 that has not been found in the release notes. But hopefully it's on a future 12.4 revision. There's been plenty of critics out there over the past year or so calling Elon a part-time CEO and things of that nature. But let's not gloss over things like this, Elon explaining why Starship actually uses stainless steel. Elon continued, "It's worth mentioning that switching to ultra-hard, cold-rolled stainless steel for Starship is what led me to make Cybertruck out of it too." Exhibit A of Tesla benefiting from Elon's other ventures. On X, Elon congratulated his buddy Narendra Modi on winning a third term by saying, "Congratulations on your victory in the world's largest democratic elections. Looking forward to my companies doing exciting work in India." Elon is very fond of Modi and has said that Tesla will be in India as soon as humanly possible. Kyle Connor from Out of Spec was talking about a Model Y over in Germany, but specifically it had the BYD LFP battery pack, and they were raving about the charging speed and ultimately the charging curve. We cannot forget that Tesla is working with CATL for a new factory in Nevada. Their CEO did say CATL is working on faster charging batteries, and specifically, CATL's CEO said they're working on faster charging batteries for Tesla. If Tesla could crack the code for a 300-mile Model Y with an LFP pack and those faster charging speeds and the better curve, with the ability to continually charge to 100% without thinking about battery degradation, that would be pretty nice. Upfit has officially launched the Cybertruck for police fleets as they teased it last week, and they're saying it will be available for delivery later this year. If you go to their website, it's actually customizable depending on what each department is looking for, so you can have extra weapon storage or enclosures for canines, you can have Starlink hooked up. The CEO of Unplugged said, "We've been thrilled with the direct feedback from police departments that have participated in our Cybertruck development, and we look forward to deploying these complete upfit vehicles to law enforcement agencies across the nation this year." Here's another quick clip of the Baidu V20 maps for Tesla in China, showing the very precise lane level guidance rather than the consistently zoomed out view that many of us are used to in the States. The granularity of this would be an awesome option for places you're not familiar with to easily discern when turns are coming up, and it would help choosing the proper lane for merges and such as well. So far, no rumblings that I've seen of this coming to the US, but we can hope. As Tesla posted on Weibo, that map is what they're referring to as city lane level navigation. I think the whole price parity conversation between EVs and ICE is a bit overdone, simply because who actually is deciding what the direct comparison really is. But understanding those inherent flaws, Bloomberg is pointing out that the cheapest 300-mile range EV is now starting at about $35,000, where the average price for a new car in the US sits around $47,000. That chart was highlighting Hyundai's Ioniq 6, which has 361 miles of range. At least 3 manufacturers, Tesla, Hyundai, Kia, and GM, now offer EVs with over 300 miles of range for less than the cost of the average new vehicle sold in the US. I think the far more important chart though is this one, the number of unique models offering over 300 miles per charge. So far this year we're up to 30, up from about 22 last year and roughly 14 in 2022. Speaking of EV demand in the US,
we want to get rid of the electric mandate for the car. How about that? They have hundreds of thousands of cars right now. And by the way, I'm a big fan of electric cars. I'm a fan of Elon. I like Elon, but you know, I like him. And I think a lot of people are going to want to buy electric cars. But if you want to buy a different type of car, you have to have a choice. Some people need to go far. Some people don't want their car built in China. Some people, you know, there are advantages to other. And basically what people have to have a choice. The electric cars don't go far. And by the way, they're incredible. He does an incredible job with Tesla. And I tell him, I said, you know, and I think he agrees with me, frankly, but you can't. They don't go far. Same thing with the trucking industry. I met with the trucking industry the other night. They said they want us to switch to electric trucks. They have to stop 6 times going to California with a load of diesel. They don't have to stop at all.
Oh boy. Now look, I'm not going to rebut some of the points he made, but it was somewhat refreshing at least hearing some positive comments about Elon and Tesla twice in a matter of seconds. Honestly though, the one distinction I wanted to make, it's pretty clear Trump's stance all along has been anti-EV mandate, not necessarily anti-EV. And believe it or not, Elon actually agrees with that sentiment in the event that these subsidies are also wiped out for oil and gas. So overall, if we can just level the playing field, save that money, and let the technologies win out on their own, that's a scenario personally I would be okay with, because Tesla would still have a huge competitive edge, and it would take away that attack vector for the anti-EV crowd. Are we going to get to that point? Who knows, but something to keep an eye on. Not only is Amy going to bat for all of Tesla shareholders, but Tesla just claimed in a court filing that proposed $5.2 billion award for the lawyers is effectively a a joke, saying that they only deserve about $13.6 million. They said at over $5 billion, it would be 17 times larger than any fee in Delaware legal history and equal to the state's entire 2024 budget. As we've said before, it's the equivalent of $288,000 per hour and would collectively make the three law firms a top 3 Tesla shareholder. Tesla said the justification for this extraordinary request defies established Delaware case law, mangles basic economics, and seeks to evade entirely the fairness checks this court imposes on fees. This case did not require the Herculean efforts that might justify the highest hourly rate in history by many orders of magnitude. Replying to that article on X, Elon said they deserve to repay Tesla legal costs and get nothing. In the filing, Tesla's lawyers are arguing that the lawsuit provided almost no benefit to Tesla, mainly because Elon didn't actually exercise any of those options. As Robin said the other day, they're already fully accounted for in the fully diluted shares outstanding count. Not only that, but the grant cost, which was around $2.3 billion at the time of issuance, was already accounted for in Tesla's financials. And shout out to everybody who stepped up. In the article, they said hundreds of Tesla shareholders have written to the company or to the court to object to the legal fee request. Listen to this. Globally, more money is being poured into solar than all other electricity generation technologies combined. This IEA report finds the share of total energy investments coming from private households has doubled from 9% in 2015 to 18% today, fueled largely by spending on rooftop solar installations, as well as investments in energy efficiency, home electrification, and EV purchases. Beyond solar, the IEA says total energy investment worldwide is expected to exceed $3 trillion this year for the first time, around $2 trillion of which will go to clean tech ranging from solar and wind, battery storage, grids, EVs, low-emission fuels, efficiency improvements, and heat pumps. The remainder, just over $1 trillion, is still going to coal, gas, and oil. An easier way to say that, though, for every $1 being spent on fossil fuel investment, another $2 is being spent on clean technology investment. This chart shows the breakdown each year and compares fossil fuel investment compared to clean energy. So you can see starting around 2020, the bars on the right for each year, which refer to clean energy, have been steadily increasing. Fossil fuel investment is still recovering from the illness lows, but not nearly as fast as clean energy. I can tell you it definitely does not feel like this in the United States, and it may not be the case, but at least globally, things are looking good. There's a new Bloomberg Law piece out there talking about Elon's comp plan. It was written by Zohar Goshen, who teaches at Columbia University specifically on corporate law and governance. There are some scholars out there arguing that Elon's comp plan for services already rendered is not permitted under Delaware law because it amounts to a gift and a waste of corporate assets, with which Zohar disagrees, which should be obvious because of course consideration was received by Tesla in that Elon actually achieved all of the targets. So for me, I don't think it takes a lawyer to recognize that that waste argument is pure nonsense, but he continues, can Tesla shareholders ratify the same package that was deemed excessive by the court? The answer is also yes. Delaware courts offer great deference to decisions embraced by independent directors and minority shareholders, the latter who are the owners and real parties in interest. It would be strange to conclude that a majority of Tesla stockholders, including some very large and sophisticated institutions, lack ordinary sound business judgment on the question of how much Elon should be paid as their CEO. Delaware law is designed to protect minority shareholders during negotiations with a controller. The argument that Tesla stockholders cannot ratify Elon's pay package essentially contends that once an error in the approval process is made, the question of how much Tesla's CEO should be compensated is now forever out of the hands of the company's stockholder owners and solely in the purview of Delaware courts. This result would be contrary to the spirit and substance of Delaware law, which defers to the informed informed decision-making of disinterested shareholders whenever possible. Thus, if you were concerned about the vote going yes, but then ultimately it being shot down again by Delaware courts, this piece should ease those fears to some degree. Today, NHTSA has issued its final set of rules for new fuel economy standards for the end of this decade. These increases in fuel economy requirements will bring the average light-duty vehicle fuel economy up to about 50.4 miles per gallon by model year 2031, which is fine, but these standards are also reduced from what was initially introduced when this number could have been as high as 58 miles per gallon. Although the requirements are less stringent than they could have been over the next decade as EV demand takes more market share, these CAFE requirements will become less and less relevant. Don't misunderstand me, their irrelevance is still decades away, but that's where we're headed. The energy storage drumbeat across Europe is finally picking up after months of lagging behind both the US and China. A trade association, EASE, which stands for European Association for Storage of Energy, sent out a media alert regarding a manifesto it published this year. In it, they said energy storage is a crucial tool to boost energy security and industrial competitiveness. They cited a data point: grid congestion costs in Germany alone totaled $4.3 billion in 2022, while the country experienced more than 150,000 electricity supply interruptions in the prior year. Wouldn't it be nice if Germany could just embrace Tesla? We won't go through it, but it's on the screen. EASE did lay out a 6-point action plan on how they can actually adopt grid storage at scale. It should be obvious, but this stuff really matters, as this could be a huge market for Shanghai's Megapack factory to export to. There's another new lawsuit out there on plain sight against Tesla and the board. We won't dive into this too much, but they say, as permitted by Delaware law, Tesla's charter provides for a higher voting standard applicable to the redomestication vote. According to the proxy, the redomestication would entirely repeal Tesla's charter. And because the redomestication to Texas would result in the amendment, alteration, or repeal of the whole charter, the affirmative vote of the holders of at least 66 2/3% of voting power of all then outstanding shares is required to approve the redomestication. They also go on to touch on the comp plan ratification, using some legalese to argue that ratification of the rescinded grant would be a gift that could only be ratified by a unanimous stockholder vote. And the last thing we'll touch on, they said, despite the invalidity of both the prospective ratification and redomestication, and that any action to validate them is void, Elon has engaged in strong-arm coercive tactics to obtain stockholder approval for both the redomestication and ratification vote. The plaintiffs in this case are requesting that the action is maintainable as a class action, and a declaration that the redomestication and ratification are void because of Elon's coercion as a controlling stockholder and director. And of course, Donald Ball, the plaintiff, and his lawyers are asking for damages and other things as well. For me, it's pretty tough to discern the potential severity of this case or its merit because it is very heavy in legalese. The simple takeaway though, Donald is arguing that Tesla redomesticating to Texas would in some way repeal or alter Tesla's charter and change the voting requirements to actually pass a vote. And of course, these charter changes or alterations would make it harder to pass certain items, not easier for Tesla. Two quick things to lighten the mood a bit. On X, Elon replied to Solving the Money Problems video about Jim Chanos and his embezzlement allegations, to which Elon said Chanos is shady. And again, replying to an SMR video, Elon said Steve Wesley, the guy we talked about yesterday, former Tesla board member, was fired from the Tesla board long ago for being an absolute weasel. Every time I read this, I picture Elon saying this with a look of disdain. Tesla released a new series of videos with quick clips from some of the board members answering some of these commonly asked questions when it comes to all of the voting right now. Honestly though, if you've been following along with Electrified, you should be able to answer all of these questions, and it's not really anything new, but I'll have this link below if you want to check it out. Tesla also just released a new 19-minute conversation between two partners at a law firm who served as independent counsel to Tesla's special committee. As we talked about, the committee was made up of one board member, Kathleen Wilson Thompson, as the other, Joe Gebbia, had recused himself. As far as the process goes, over 8 weeks, the committee met 16 times for over 26 hours. Kathleen herself spent more than 200 total hours on the work, and these two lawyers each spent more than 600 hours. On the one board member for committee, they said committees of one are perfectly valid under Delaware law, and in fact, Delaware courts have in prior cases specifically encouraged Tesla itself to use a committee of one if needed. Again though, I did go through this transcript and there's not really too much impactful news that I think is worth covering, but it'll be below if you're interested. I'll send you guys into the weekend with a few clips from a new podcast featuring Drew Baglino talking about Tesla's Master Plan Part 3. Don't forget, opt in to the Electrified newsletter, always linked below, or electrifiednews.com. Hope you have a safe and wonderful weekend. Please like the video if you did. You can find me on X linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.
What, if anything, gives you pause? Like, as you look at the material requirement question, where do you think we actually have any degree of a bottleneck?
Well, it's not going to be, are the resources in the ground? It's going to be, do the geopolitics and the permitting authorities that be mean that those resources are rendered effectively inaccessible, even though they practically should be accessible. That's probably my biggest pause. And so maybe that will be solved through trade agreements or, rationalization of resource policy in certain developed economies. That's probably the thing I'm most worried about. There's a lot of people that just do the straight math and they're like, well, look at all the neodymium in every magnet and like all those magnets, we got to multiply that by 1 billion or trillion or whatever, and there's nowhere near enough neodymium. But the problem with that math is that people are using neodymium because the pricing signals they see in the marketplace make it seem like the best magnet to use. But actually, magnet materials, for example, are incredibly substitutable. And if you think of the design space as not just the magnet, but the magnet plus the electromagnetic system it's inside of, with the steel and the geometry of the rotor and the stator and the whole motor, and actually maybe even the power electronics and the mechanical advantage gearing system it's attached to, you can dramatically change what magnet material you're using and still achieve the mission objective. So you can't just do the simple math and say there's not going to be enough of something. And in fact, we took advantage of that and said, well, all of these things are substitutable when coming up with our resource requirements. And that applies not just to like the motors in cars, but the motors in heat pumps, the motors in wind turbines, the motors in everything. And something similar like that applies to all of the resources that are in use to make this happen. Like, there are a lot of substitutes. Our lithium refinery in Texas, we actually are doing a different process specifically to kind of help with some of the permitting aspects like you've described. And some of them actually have lower total cost once they achieve their end objective. And Tesla invested in a couple of those, and there's other companies that have tried it. So I think, again, if the rules just stay the same, then innovation will happen and companies can go out and solve these problems and go through the technology development cycle to get them done.
With Master Plan 3, like, what do you want it to accomplish?
I would hope that the takeaway is that we should redirect the resources that are going into, let's say, fighting sustainable energy technologies into finding even better sustainable energy pathways. I think the point of putting together all of the arguments in this paper was to say there is a feasible path, and that feasible path actually looks pretty attractive when you look at investment per year, resource use, total energy, total electricity production. I mean, one of the interesting stats in the paper, which I honestly, it's almost staggering to me that this is the case. 1.5 terawatts is the claimed, the paper claims that 1.5 terawatts is the total amount of renewable energy capacity that will need to be deployed on an annual basis to maintain the sustainable energy economy. And that's basically keeping up with plant retirements. So on a steady state basis, 1.5 terawatts is how much you need to deploy. Now, last year, the world globally deployed almost 500 gigawatts, which is unbelievable.
Yeah. You know how much of that was like solar in China, though?
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact number. It's an unbelievable amount.
Yeah. Oh, no, it is. I mean, and it's because their economy is still growing rapidly, and they've had this central decision-making pathway of like, we will go renewable, right? They can just command, it shall be so. But yeah, 500 gigawatts, right? And that's only that's much closer than an order of magnitude away from where we need to be. You only need a 3x from here, and the growth rate has just been staggering. More than 100 gigawatts a year of growth.
We might have a terawatt year this decade. It's not crazy.
Wild. Those are the numbers. We just wanted to put those numbers out there so that, again, people kind of redirect their brain space from fighting this concept to finding the best way to enable it. And again, I'm not stating that the Master Plan Part 3 is the best way. It is a way. There are many ways to do it. And the carrots that are shown, like it's lower total investment, the resources required, all of these things are and of course you have less air pollutants, climate change goes away, or at least is moderated. There's so many reasons to do it. And now we should just all collaborate on finding more paths, not just this path, but other paths, rather than continue to fight this concept. I think that's probably the primary point of the paper.